I should say. So we're talking about layers and layers and layers of trauma that have gone undiagnosed and have gone just totally just ignored in the sense of it's common. Many of us have grown up in a culture where we don't, quote unquote, tell our business. We don't talk outside our house, right? So when I go through a traumatic experience, I'm taught to suppress it, tuck it in the corner, fix my face, and go on with my day. My friend is taught the same thing. My girlfriend's taught the same. All of us are taught the same thing. So all of this stuff is brewing within inside of us. So what happens? So what is trauma? Trauma leads to what we call stress responses. And I'm gonna bring it into when we talk about our young people real quick. There's something that happens with trauma. There's something in our brain called the amygdala. Okay, I'm sure many of us are familiar with the amygdala. Amygdala is in our brain. It's responsible for scanning threats. So its job is to scan the environment for threats. And it's also the place where the emotional memory is stored. So, if you hear a song that you haven't heard since you was 15 years old and it plays today and it takes you back and you like, man, I wonder what he's doing. I wonder what she's doing, right? That's that amygdala kicking in. It's in our midbrain. It's in our instinctual brain. Okay. Why do I bring that up? Let me give you an example of how it works. Let's say I'm 10 years old and I'm walking down the street. And while I'm walking down the street, I hear a chain rattle. I look up and I see two pit bulls running towards me, charging. My heart starts beating fast. I start running. Oh my gosh, I'm running for my life. I get away. Whew, I made it. I don't know. That may not be a traumatic experience for me. I don't know. 30 years later, I'm walking down the street. I hear a chain rattle. Next thing you know, I just take off running, right? And then I snap out of it like, whoo, there's no threat. That's the amygdala. The amygdala had kept a emotional memory of connecting that chain rattle to threat, okay? So I say all that to say, when we're working in our communities, can you imagine how many, using this as a metaphor, how many chain rattles are going off throughout the day? Where that alarm is constantly being set off. That alarm, if for anybody that work with young people, and when I say young people, I mean even me, my generation. You ever work with people and everything you say, they reading into it? What you mean by that? They constantly on guard. That's their chain. That's that chain rattling. They're constantly on guard, right? This is what we're dealing with. So when we're talking about working with our communities, we have to have what's called a trauma-informed approach. The general responses, and I'll hand it back over and we could open it up. But the general responses to trauma are fight, flight, freeze, or appease. Okay. Many of us talk about fight, flight, and freeze, but there's also something called appeasement. And this is what Dr. Smile was talking about when he was talking about sometimes how some of us could be more whiter than white people. It's what it is we're really appeasing, right? Smiling when there's nothing funny, right? Itching. There's no itch when I'm scratching. It's because I'm constantly trying to make myself smaller so I can make other people feel comfortable. I'm gonna suppress my own struggle. I'm gonna suppress my own. I don't want to talk about racism too much because I don't want y'all to feel uncomfortable, right? I'm appeasing. That is a trauma response. And when we look at communities, you see this in our community. It happens on an individual level, but I'm talking community right now. You have fighting. Like right now in the climate that we're in, we have some people that's all they want to do. They ready to fight. You try to talk to them about strategy, like, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't approach it. I don't care about none of that. They tearing up meetings because they're in strictly fight mode. You can't tell them about strategy and let's be politically correct. No, I don't want to hear none of it. They cussing out everybody, right? And then you have people that's in flight mode. These are people who, this is parts of the community that don't want to deal with anything racial, don't want to, or anything social, anything. I don't want to deal with it. I just want to make my money, tuck my head in the sand, watch my sports, and just be done. I don't want to deal with it. That's flight. Then you have people that are in freeze mode when we're talking about our communities. This is just totally apathetic. It ain't gonna matter anyway. Why do it? Why vote? It ain't gonna matter. Why do this? It ain't gonna matter. Why? They're just in a perpetual freeze mode. And then you have the people, like we just said, that are in appeasement, where they're always trying to make themselves smaller to make somebody else feel comfortable, always smiling and trying to make somebody else feel comfortable. But the problem with that is all that does is leads to suppression. And when we talk about it, one thing that people may not know, but one of the most healthiest response is fight. Because what starts to happen is just think about if anybody has ever been bullied or anything. You go through this thing where you start to appease, you make yourself smaller, right? And next thing you know, you relive that bullying, you relive that oppression, and then you start to get mad, and you start to want to reclaim your power back. And the first thing you want to do is fight, right? I just want to fight, you know. I mean, anytime that amygdala is going off, anytime that chain rattle, I'm in fight mode, and that's what we have right now. What's going on, right? So, with that being said, a few things. And then I open it up. As we work with our community, we have to keep this in mind that we are working with not only community trauma, we're working with intergenerational trauma. Because many of our previous generations didn't even have the language to call it trauma. Like I said, most of the stuff that many of our elders went through, it was not, even my own generation, it was not called trauma. It was just stuff that you go through. But guess what happens? We start to pass that on. We start to pass trauma responses on. Why do you think I can, if I did a survey right now, I can guarantee you over half have taught their children this. If somebody put their hands on you in school, you make sure you put your hands on them. And don't worry about getting in trouble. I'll deal with the teachers. Believe it or not, that is generally a trauma response. And the reason why is because we teach our children that is because we have learned throughout the decades and the centuries not to trust authority to move in our best interests. So we teach our children, you handle it and we'll deal with it. We'll handle it our own way because we know authority traditionally does not work in our favor, right? Even when we're dealing with law enforcement and all, it's the same thing. Most of our amygdalas are going off. That's why if you see all these videos, they're saying, calm down. You can't tell me to calm down when my amygdala is on fire, right? And only way to really deal with trauma is safe relationships. That takes time. So what I want us to understand is when we talk about dealing with community trauma, we're going to have to start to be very intentional about rebuilding the fibers of our communities, rebuilding them. There is not only is there problems amongst, in the communities amongst each other, there's problems amongst generations, all of that. The younger doesn't want to talk to the older want to talk to the older. I know people say it's Willie Lynch and all of that, but it's also dealing with trauma and things of that nature that we have to start to break. And we have, for us who are really seeking to work with our community, we have to be uncomfortable. And what I mean by that, I have to be willing to say hi to somebody who looks at me and say, who are you? Or I have to be able to say, hey, how you doing, brother? And be okay with somebody saying, I ain't your brother, right? Because their amygdala is on fire, right? I can't take that personal. I have to be able to talk to these people who's telling me, now I don't need your help. What can you tell me? You ain't from all of that stuff that many of us have to deal with. Just so you know, my background is working with incarcerated youth. So that's what I deal with, right? And we have to be able to deal with that, understanding that most of the responses that are their initial responses are not personal. They're speaking to their experience. They're in fight mode. They're in flight mode. They're in freeze mode. They're speaking to their experience. Okay. So with that being said, I'll open it up and hopefully, we have a dialogue about whatever, if any kind of things you want me to speak on, I'm here, but thank you.
Oh, wow. I would say welcome to the empowerment zone, Man Cave. Listen, we have the phenomenal Dr. Terrance Robert online with us. He's in the Man Cave. Dr. Roberts, I'm going to turn it over to you. And I know you had a little special song that you wanted to play. I don't know if you still want that to play, but I got your back, my brother. Unmute yourself and you can take it away. When you want me to fade that music out, I'm your DJ right now. Let me know. You're can't hear you. Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
So fine. I would weave a magic spell of grace
All right, Dr. Roberts, let's see if we can hear you.
Dr. Roberts, you have to change the output of the mic. On the top left, there's a circle with 3 lines. If you click on that in the middle of the screen, there should be a drop down for mic option. Just make sure it's the external mic, headset mic. So click the external headset mic and then refresh. Hey, Pastor, if you want, Anthony, if you want to keep it going, I'll give Dr. Roberts a call and I'll have him set up before we come back.
Okay, let's do that. Well, until he comes back on, we have time. We're fine. We're fine. I really was blessed by Mr. Ch, who said, "Thank you, Mr. K-Rahn. I'm 78 years old and I'm still learning." Powerful. Dr. Anthony, powerful. Samad. All right. Dr. Terrance.
Am I on yet?
Oh, you're on now, sir.
Okay.
All right. Now, this is your song playing. Is this the song that you wanted to play?
Yes, indeed. That's the song. If I had a golden thread, and it's a stand-in for if I had a panacea for all the problems, I would be in good shape. I don't know anybody who does have. But in any case, I apologize for the technical problems. I don't know. The guys in New York are wonderful. For the past half hour, I've had a short lesson in technology. I've forgotten most of it already, which is also fairly typical. But in any case, I just want to share a main topic today is about mental health. How does one maintain mental stability in the face of chaos? And of course, life in this country has been chaos for centuries. So we've had a lot of opportunity to learn this. However, the engaging task of staying alive and feeding a family seemed to take precedence over paying attention to something called mental health. But I'd like for us to think about it this way. If we are not mentally healthy, we're no good to self or anybody else. And we also have to consider that as we are physical, emotional, and psychological beings, we're also mental beings. And our mental health is paramount in that paradigm. We have to also have regular checkups physically and regular checkups mentally. And I know that's not good news for a lot of people who fear even talking about the concept of mental health because it conjures up images of straitjackets and cells where you're locked away, but not true, not true. I'm talking here today about being able to cope with a lot of the things that Mr. Valantine was talking about, the trauma of daily life. How does one deal with that? How do we cope with it? Actually, I have a one-word response for all of it, and that word is choice. You see, human beings are left with one possible option out of all the things in the universe, and that is choice. None of us have the power to create. We can't even destroy anything. We could participate and watch while something is altered from its current state to another state, i.e., if we held a match to a piece of paper, you would ignite the paper and it would burn and it would dissolve into ashes and gas, but the essence of it would not be gone anywhere. It will still be there in another form. So we can't destroy. So if we can't create and we can't destroy, what are we left with? Choosing. And what do we choose? The known options. Now, the known options, that's a key phrase because most of us don't know many options. We live with a few options and we use them over and over, and they're inadequate. And that is one of the key reasons why we see people in mental distress. They're longing to know what to do. They really do want to know what to do, but they simply don't have access to the option. How do you get those options? By learning, of course. But that's not as easily done as it is said. All of the ways that we have of learning are some people, for whatever their reasons, do not have or do not take the opportunity to find access to those options. And so if we really focus on this notion of choice, we're forced to look at it from the standpoint of relationships. Everything we do as human beings is done in the context of relationship with someone else. We are relational beings. And if those relationships are not the best, if they're not optimum, they don't give us what we really need. Now, here's the ideal setting. You have an individual who enters the universe, exits the womb, and lands in the hands of people who absolutely love this new person. That sounds good, right? Not every single human being has that experience. Some new people land in the arms of those who really don't want them, who would prefer that they not be around, who would prefer that they exit the scene as soon as possible. So we have child abuse in a broad sense. But that's saying a lot in a short term, but you get the picture. So we have this continuum from that person who lands in the arms of people who absolutely love and adore, and at the other extreme, landing in the arms of people who really wish they were dead or gone. Now, how do you deal with that if you happen to be on that extreme end where people don't really love you? You don't have that many options to begin with, and you certainly don't have opportunity to learn many more. Sometimes that group of people we call the throwaway children. They're just thrown away, and they wind up in the bottom half of society, struggling along like bottom feeders. That's not an ideal situation. And it's up to the rest of us who have the potential to rise above that, or who start off above that, to make certain that there is a way to redeem those who start off at the wrong end. I call it the wrong end because it is indeed the wrong end. That is part of our development of mental health. So one onus of responsibility is on those who start off at the better end, if you will, of the continuum. To whom much is given, much is required, is very simple. And so think about it for yourself. Where did you start? Were you one of the lucky ones who landed in a really nice family, people who loved you, gave you every advantage, and you were able to find your way to learning about the options, and you're now able to enjoy the fruits of that labor? Well, it's not yours alone to enjoy, as it turns out, because we're all in this thing together. So another way of looking at good mental health in a community is to determine how many people are engaged in helping others develop the kinds of mental health that is needed in every case. So not only are we in a society that is relational, we are in a society that carries some responsibility with it. So if we are blessed, more able, better endowed, then part of our legacy has to be to share that with those who don't have as much. So spending time with people, developing those relationships is paramount. Now, I was listening to Mr. Valantine talk, and he talked about the fact that building relationships takes a long time. It does. No time like the present. So getting your own house in order and then making certain that you are committed to helping others, that's the answer in a nutshell. One word, choice, but knowing that your choice includes reaching out, helping others learn how to cope with the madness that we call life. Now, with that, I'm going to stop because hopefully I have engendered enough questions in the minds of those who are listening that we can have a dialogue. And since I got here late, I don't want to take up a lot of time. But in any case, thank you. It's been my pleasure, and I look forward to our ongoing dialogue.
I'm loving this, and I'm not promoting McDonald's, but I'm loving this. Yes. Oh wow, what a blessing! It's your opportunity to chime in. We have about 10 plus minutes to for you to ask our distinguished panelists any questions. So please. Nas, look for any men who have their hands up to bring them on. And then once you ask your question or share, Nas will take you off screen.
How do I know if this thing is being
I don't have the answer to that one.
Okay. Everybody's going, wow. I'm still chewing on everything. 3 wise men have spoken, Chris Jones said.
We traumatized them.
Hey, there's Raphael.
Got a question. Can you guys
Wow.
hear me?
I can hear you.
Here's Raphael.
Go ahead, Raphael.
Go ahead, Raphael.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Ask your question.
Oh, fantastic. Well, first of all, let me commend the distinguished panel on the words that you all were so eloquently capable of articulating. And I've got a question from a somewhat different perspective. So I've got 2 boys that came up the private school arena. To Dr. Roberts' point, they were, in a nurturing household, well loved and supported. How do I convey? What's the message to them, though, to understand that, in as much as you were fortunate, you still, from the perspective of how you're viewed, aren't too much dissimilar from some of the adversity that that you are actually benefiting from, because people have been wise enough to say, hey, I don't want to go down that road. I'm going to ensure that mine aren't necessarily castigated in that same arena. How do we convey to that group? What's the messaging to those, those that I think need it more, because they're going to be capable of influencing a lot of the individuals that they're coming into contact who don't look like them?
Yeah, very good question. And I think that parental responsibility is the one word, or the 2 words that come to mind in terms of educating your own kids. I have 2 daughters, and I started this conversation with them in utero. I got permission from my wife to start speaking through the membranes when those kids were being developed. What I wanted is, for one, them to hear my voice, but also to let them know that we were already in an ongoing dialogue about what was going on in the world they were entering. I wanted them to know, for instance, that as young Black girls, they were going to find out that they were not as welcomed into the universe as some of their non-Black peers. They needed to have this information. No matter how good they had it, they were going to still have to deal with all the garbage out there. But it had nothing to do with them. They learned how to self-define. They learned very early in life how to identify their locus of control as being internal and not external. External locus of control is when you give other people permission to tell you who you are. They understood that as young kids. They knew who they were. Didn't matter what other people said. And often I use an illustration with school kids. I say, let's suppose you're walking down the corridor at school, and behind you, you hear a voice yelling out, hey, stupid. And then you turn around. Now, I ask them, why are you turning around? Are you signing a social contract that stupid applies to you? Did you not know your name was not stupid? It's a very simple and elementary illustration, but the point is made that if you know who you are, it doesn't matter who other people think you are. Those 2 do not equate. So that's one answer. Not the only one, but thank you. That's a great question.
Outstanding. Thank you, Raphael. All right, Nas, any other questions for our panelists? You can bring those men up.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I have a question for any of the panel. Today has been awesome. I mean, everybody has provided a lot of input, and it appears that the more we come together, the further we are apart. And we have so many viewpoints here, which is probably good. So it appears that we've established where we are. Does anybody have a plan as to where we go from here? And is there a director? I know we talked about at some time a few years ago that there is no civil rights leader now because we're scattered. So in context of what's been discussed here, is there a plan? Who's directing it, and what's the end goal? Anybody?
I'll take it. Let me make sure my mic is on. First of all, it's good to see you, Chuck.
Yeah.
I know from his gas company days. As I stated earlier, every generation speaks for themselves, and the paradigms shift. I understand what we're dealing with today with young people is different than what we were dealing with in my generation or Dr. Roberts' generation. Everybody's parents thought that the generation came after them were crazy what they was talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, so these young people see something, and change is evolution. It's not immediate; it's incremental. Dr. Roberts' generation produced a Civil Rights Act and a Voting Rights Act. My generation produced a black president. K-Rahn's generation is going to produce reparations. That's your charge, bro. Reparations.
I'm on it.
Because white people do owe us, you know, whether you want it or not. You know, everybody else who was entitled to it, you know, we haven't gotten it because we haven't demanded it, because we've been conflicted on the question. It's not a question as to whether to it. Okay, they took our land. You know, they've used segregation law to construct our earning capacity, to discriminate against us. So that's just about putting pencil to paper on that and having the political will to make it happen. In terms of talking about anti-racism, where we go from here is we make white people talk about racism. Okay, and as I stated earlier, you know, we spent the last 30 years massaging or letting them redefine whether racism exists or not in the Reagan era. Now, this is an anti-racism movement, and it's time for those who claim that there are allies of equity and justice to voice themselves, and we give them the platforms to do it. Just like, you know, they like to come into our churches, you know, during election time. Let's have some anti-racism workshops and see who wants to come and talk about racism and what white people's responsibility to anti-racism is. That's where we go from here.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You know what I would share on that real quick, there's something, I work with young people in regards to their there's something that really blew my mind when I heard it. It says nobody operates beyond the boundaries of their own self-image. So regardless of how much potential I may see in somebody else or whatever, if they don't see it within themselves, they will never operate according to their potential. And the way and it's important, and I'll leave it at this, it was explained to me like a thermostat. If I set my thermostat in my office is 72 degrees, if it gets hotter than 72 degrees in here, the air is going to kick on and cool it off and bring it back to 72 degrees, right? And if it gets colder, the heat is going to kick on, bring it back to 72 degrees. Our self-image is the same way. And I'm speaking in first person when I know how serious that is, where my self-image will tell me what to kick it back to. So let's say I'm dreaming too big. My self-image will say, people like us don't dream that big. Bring it back to 72. You know, I may read some books and start growing my vocabulary. My self-image. Why are you using them big words? People like us don't use those type of words. So I work very, very intentionally to help build the self-image of our young people so they don't have these self-limiting beliefs that causes all the self-sabotage that we see in the community.
Well, thank you, Dr. K. This information has been so good, and you kind of answered the question that I was going to. But as far as listening to you hearing about the microaggression, the different aspects of trauma and choice, how would we as a group, as an older generation, begin to sit down with a younger generation and to not tell them what to do, but listen to them, and we're able to share our lives, our actual experiences, and listen to them, and maybe share of, well, maybe you might want to look at it this way, or giving them a perspective to look at. How would you address that for us to be able to speak with starting even right there within family, nephews, nieces, and close friends that are in a younger group? And I'm talking in the neighborhood of 18 to 20 years old.
Well, I would say, anybody want to take it? Okay. Well,
I can take it. I was trying to give Dr. Roberts a chance to talk, but earlier I talked about the knowledge about the Millennial and Gen Z symposium that we had at the Dineley Institute, Cal State Dominguez Hills earlier this year, where we let young people see. When we create forums for young people, we invite them and then we don't let them talk. While knowledge transfer is important, instead of talking to them, we need to let them ask us the questions. Otherwise, they tune out because we might be talking about something that they either can't relate to or are totally not interested in. But we got to create the platforms for them to talk. If we invite them to a conference, then let them talk, and we do the listening, and we respond to whatever is on their minds, and we transfer knowledge that way. That's how I would recommend it.
That's good.
Yeah.
Also, if I can just chime in here, you hit the nail on the head, Dr. Samad. I believe that in this season, we have to, and when I say we collectively as a community, as a people, have to become what I call bridge builders. And that has everything to do with intergenerational conversation. And those of us who are baby boomers, I just made it in to that category, but not the answers, and we know everything, because you'll be surprised at the brilliancy of Generation X, Generation Z. My daughters are brilliant, and so I have learned to hear their views, hear their beliefs, because they have something to say. They're able to add value to the family. They're able to add value to our community. And so we together means each one has a role. Each one plays a role. Each one has a gift to bring. Each one supplies a need to make us the whole that God originally intended for us to be. So yeah, we just have to, Brother Horton, just say, you know what? Let's just sit down and talk. Let's sit down and talk.
Yeah.
That's where it starts at.
Yeah.
And we need to do it on a small scale and a larger scale, community-wise. Same thing for preachers. Listen, nobody knows it all. Nobody has it all. But when we come together, it's powerful.
Thank you very much.
I would like to add to that, because that's an important one. When we're dealing with young people, and it's a challenge, it's not easy, but we have to be there. You see what I'm saying? Versus inviting them to come where we are. Because once we invite them to come where we are, we're comfortable there. Yeah. They're not. You see what I'm saying? We have to be where they are. Why is the big homie? Why does the young man listen to the big homie? Not just because he's cool. He's there. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And most of the time he's there, unfortunately, a lot of times, because he don't have nothing else to do. So he's there just like the kid is there. And the many people who do have a lot of, insight to offer our young people, we have a lot of stuff that we're doing, so we don't really have the schedule to be there. But we have to start to be very intentional about being there, because something's very interesting about men and young men in particular. Generally, we don't talk. Like, I'm not just gonna get on the phone and talk or go to my friend's house and talk. We generally talk in the context of doing something. You know, I'll go to the friend's house and let's play NBA 2K, and while we playing, we'll talk. Let's go fix the fence, and while we fixing the fence, we'll talk. So we have to find things to share for our young people to do so they feel comfortable talking, and we have to be there. We have to be there because it's a relationship versus let me pop in and teach you something and pop out, because the relationship is not there yet.
Okay. I don't think we have anyone else with a question for this panel. I would like for each of you to take a minute and give us men a charge. Give us men an action item. What we can do to help deconstruct systemic racism. What we can do to bring our communities together, our families together. Give us that. And I'd like to start with Dr. Roberts, which you shared some powerful things. I have actually been teaching in a message the past 2 or 3 weeks on soul wound and why people never walk in their full potential in the greatness that God created them in. So if you can start, Dr. Roberts, and then Dr. Samad, you go in closing, and Dr. Valantine, share with all the parents out here an action item for engaging our young people. Dr. Roberts.
I think the first thing I would say is that in order for effective change to happen in any sphere, we have to start with imagination. One has to be able to imagine what something different would look like. We have to give voice to those imagined thoughts. By doing that, we plant the seeds, not only within self, but within those who listen to us, to begin to think outside the box. I'm amazed at how many people are caught up in what I call the progress narrative about this country. A lot of people are asking me always, do you think we've made progress? My main answer is no, because we've just shuffled the pieces around inside the box. We've not gone outside the box. We've got to imagine how things are going to be. And then if we can get a lot of people involved in that kind of dialogue, I think we could have what I've longed to see for a while, a national or international dialogue about real change in this arena of things racial. Thank you.
You know, there's a Proverbs 23 says, I think it's 7, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
So is he.
And
right.
So therefore, yes, you're right, Dr. Roberts. I wrote a book, not to give myself a plug, some years ago entitled Extreme Makeover of the Mind, because that's where it starts. Yes, sir. Dr. Samad.
Yes. The last thought that I would leave with the audience in terms of a charge is to identify how you want to spend the rest of your life. One of the impediments of the African American community is we still have people trying to lead long after their generation has served. You're never too old to lead. In fact, California is getting ready to deal with a senior tsunami, and so there's a place for that. But trying to lead young people in a direction that they're not prepared to go with antiquated strategies to do for your generation, so it's darn sure not going to work for their generation, that we need to give them the opportunity to lead. You know, the white community prepares their leaders, and they get into Congress at 20 and 30, and our people get in at 50 and 60, you know, because the leaders stay too long. And no movement in America has ever taken place without youth. The second thing is, you know, I have to disagree with K-Rahn a little bit. Sometimes we have to invite young people into spaces because they don't know what they don't know. You know, whenever young people want to come talk to me, I have them meet me at my office, come up to the university, because some of them have never been on a university campus. They have never seen certain things in our society. And sometimes we have to show them things other than that they know. And then they will begin to ask questions about that. You know, I'm sure, Pastor, when folk want to be counseled, yeah, you'll go down to the park and talk to them, but you say, young man, why don't you come to my office at the church? And you know, and then they get spooky about the church. Well, no, it's just me and you, just me and you. So sometimes you got to show them something that they don't know or that they have never seen before, that will open up their minds in a different way. And then the last thing our charge is to provide our young people with all of the resources that we have acquired. We won't be able to take it with us. You know, like I said earlier, you know, if you have some resources that you can share with young people, you know, that will give them a hand up, a leg up, a toe up, then help them. If a young person, you know, says that you go to college, but they don't have money for books, then buy their books. You know, if a young person wants to go compete, you know, at a debate, you know, then pay for their air tickets. You know, like the young people say, I got 5 on it, you know, help them get where they need to go. No, I'm not going to do it for you, but I'll help you get there. Okay. In other words, be their inspiration, and take their excuses away so they can make happen for them what they can make happen. We're now positioned, you know, African Americans are affluent, you know, not, you know, in the same context that white people are affluent, because if you go back 100 years, you know, we still 3/5 of what they are in terms of wealth. We still only 1/10, you know, of their aggregate wealth. But the reality is that we have a greater capacity to help young people than we once did, because that's exactly how all of us who were first generation graduates, all of our family members who didn't have money, they put 5 on it to send us off to college. They put, you know, food in our bag, you know, we took a duffel bag and we might have had $10 in our pocket. And they said, and they gave us encouragement to say, once you get there, you know what to do. You'll figure it out once you get there. But they took the excuse away that you couldn't go because you didn't have. Okay. And we have to do that same thing.
That's good. Thank you, Dr. Valantine. Right, let's close it out.
What I would say is definitely agree with everything that's been said. And just for those who have relationships with these young people, just be very intentional about building the self-image. I can't stress that enough. Building the self-image and the critical thinking. You know, again, anytime we disrespect the normalcy of a community or a culture, it automatically creates defense. So a lot of times when I work with younger people, some of the stuff, you know, I'm not far from them, but it seems crazy to me. But I'm not going to say that. I'm going to have a dialogue, you know, to help them critically think about it. Like, for instance, when I talk to my son, he's listening to all the latest rap, you know. I could tell him, don't listen to that, just like my mom told me. But of course, I listen to all of it. So instead, I'll say, don't sneak it. Let me hear it. You know, play it. I want to hear it. And, you know, and then after I listen to it, we're going to have a conversation. And I asked him a question. I said, have you ever seen any other people other than Black people whose entertainment is about killing themselves? What other people make money off making music about destroying and killing themselves? Oh, I never thought about that. Okay, well, think about it. You know, I'm not going to tell you to turn it off, but I definitely want you to have a critical ear when you listen to it. You know what I'm saying? And those are the type of things that I encourage us to do. Help our young people critically think and navigate and find their way. Because most of us is crazy to me, you know, but I'm older now, you know, so that's what I would say.
Outstanding. Thank you, sir. Gentlemen, I've been honored to host this segment. You all have blessed me, and I'm sure the man in this man cave has been blessed. Gentlemen, will you give these awesome men a big clap in the chat box there? If you have any questions for them, hit them up. We're about 10 minutes away from closing the conference out. Thank you so much, Dr. Samad, Dr. Roberts, Dr. Valantine. You guys are awesome.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, Miss Elisa Farmer, would like for everybody to pay attention to one of the chats that says today's conference style was a new platform. Of course, we all know that. The vendor stores were unable to be loaded in time for the conference. So she states in that chat that we will feature the vendors and will provide the information to you at a later date. So she's our community engagement specialist. Thank you so much for that, Elisa. And that translates to me that they'll send us all an email. So we'll have an opportunity to, I'm a believer in supporting local businesses. And we had some awesome vendors that were going to be a part of this program, this conference today. So I encourage you, once you get there, to visit them once you get the email link. Derek, I see you, D. Yes. Many of you men, things that you have to say, cause I love you guys. Hey, listen, right now, guys, in closing, it's been phenomenal. We are going to get my band ready here as we get ready to close out here. We're going to have some closing remarks from our distinguished executive team and committee. I'd like, Nas, for you to bring to the screen, if you can, Mr. Chuck Pullum, Harlan Ward, Ron Carter. Not sure if our director, Clark Rucker, will be able to connect, but let's try to get him on. He says all of his men have given great accolades about the conference today. Stephen Taylor, Christopher Walker, Roger Tinsley, Danger Man, the urban superhero. That's right, our hero, and Mr. Dale Yarbrough. You can bring all of these distinguished men to the platform. That will be great. And Chuck, hey, man, you've been here a long time. I'm honored that you guys would allow me to be a part of this distinguished committee. So please share your thoughts on the conference. Anything you have to share with the men in the man cave today, just real quickly, we'll go around.
Well, first of all, thank you, Pastor McFarland, for being such a great MC. You have really carried us and made that bridge, and I really appreciate everybody that's participated. I think we broke ground today. This was more than we could have dreamed of in putting this together for the first time. And it was some good subject matter. I would hope that we will leave this with a plan somewhere in mind where we don't come back this time next year and we're still talking about the same stuff. So let's get some action in between there. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Love you much. Thank you.
Harlan.
Yes, let me just say thank you to all of our participants today. Hope you had a great time, had a great lunch, enjoyed the Man Cave swag box. So thank you to all of our speakers. And then last, let me just say thank you, Pastor McFarland. You missed your calling. You're a great MC, great comedian. And so I think you got a second job there. So thank you very much for being the MC today. Thank you.
Sir, I appreciate that. BET tried to book me, but I said I'm busy. I'm doing the main thing.
You got jokes. You got jokes.
Hey, real quick, Clark Rucker wanted me to share with you men in the man cave. One, as an executive board member here, he felt it was just an excellent job done today by everyone. He received a lot of positive feedback from the men that he's invited to the conference. He said many of the guys that he invited today had never attended in the past and were very complimentary of our speakers, our program, the messages that were shared. He also said thank you to me for an excellent job. Thank you, brother. And he said, I thank members of the Man Cave Board for contributing to a great event in 2020. Hoping for future and best wishes in 2020. That's from Mr. Rucker himself.
Yeah.
All right.
And thank you, Clark. I do want to say, Clark, even though we gave you a hard time, man, you were a good leader. You hung in there and you put us all together. So thank you, Clark. And once again, we can't say enough for the lady herself, the one and only Miss Lena Kennedy. You are visionary, and we thank you very much once again for holding us together here.
Yeah, she rocked.
Yeah, let me echo that. Thank you very much, Clark. Thank you very much, Lena. Hard work on everyone's.
All right. Mr. Yarbrough, yes, sir.
Well, to the whole group and to Lena and Clark, you guys did a fantastic job. When I grow up, I want to be just like you. But everything was inspirational. It also indicated to me what can be done. So I hope that some consideration can be given to a follow-up activity so that we can develop some specific plans to deal with some of the information that has come out of the conference. And Pastor,
yes, sir.
You did it, fella. You're the bomb. And all the other members of the committee.
Thank you, sir. That means a lot coming from you. Thank you. All right. Well, I guess Nas was not able to get some of the other committee members online, but these gentlemen here are the original OGs that I'm blessed to work with. And again, I just want to say and ditto what all of these men have said. You know, hey, we've come to the end of our conference, and we hope each and every one of you had a fun time, received some phenomenal information, new information. Hopefully we made a few new friends. I tell you this, I'm going to connect with some of these brothers. So don't be surprised if I'm figuring out how to contact you, email or call you and say, hey. But most importantly, we hope we all understand that our health is our wealth. In close, on behalf of Ms. Lena Kennedy and the entire Man Cave Committee, we want to thank you for joining us for the Southern California Women's Conference 20th anniversary, featuring this distinguished group of men here. That's each and every one of you men that made this day possible. So again, please give yourselves a big round of applause at this time for being a part of this 20th anniversary. And do not forget, our health is our wealth. God bless you, and catch you on the other side in 2021. Till the next time, gentlemen.
See ya.